We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! This is part 7 of What If Naruto was sent to another dimension. A different custom. A different language. A different time. A different dimension. Damn it Kakashi, where the hell did your Kamui send me? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 17. Altair seemed to ponder her statement for a moment. That just made Naruto even more curious as the wait for the answer began to drag on. He sat as patiently as possible though and was eventually rewarded with a small smile. The council, they see something interesting in you. Naruto looked at her, expecting more. She didn't say anything though, which forced Naruto to ask, so is that it? Shaking her head, the woman then decided to continue. There was more behind that statement than what I just said, so let me elaborate. You are an interesting person, Naruto. Never has someone blatantly disrespected them in their presence, let alone twice. You seem to hold no fear towards them and their position despite having no solid information on how powerful they are. Some people would say that's ignorance, but I believe it's more than that. We also have no information on you, not even your name. The council is always on the lookout for people of great power like yourself, and for you to have avoided detection for so long is quite the accomplishment. Thus, the council is interested in you. As the woman spoke, Naruto could feel his ego inflating, but at the same time realize his theory was turning into fact. They were openly admitting he was super strong, but at the same time they saw him as an unknown variable. Ignoring his mind for the moment though, he refocused on Altair. They wish to test your strength to gauge just how powerful you are in relations to the other 10 saints. They want to know what someone so young can do that can force a former wizard of the 10 saints to the brink of his powers like you did with Jose Porla. I especially am interested in this, as I find you so very intriguing. Focusing just enough on Altair's almost predatory expression to give her the justified response, Naruto retreated into his own thoughts again. So, if I can read this right, they aren't just cautious of me, they are bordering on scared. That definitely sounds like something older people in power would do. Altair-san, however, what's her deal? Leaning back slightly from the woman, Naruto almost shivered from the thin-eyed, hungry look she was giving him as she leant in. He didn't even know if she knew she was doing it. It made her look incredibly sexy, but it also begged Naruto to wonder about her. She says the council is scared of me. Why isn't she scared then, or at the very least cautious? Right now she looks like she could eat me up. There's gotta be something more to her than simply being a council member. Clearing his throat, Naruto watched in fascination as Altair gracefully slid back into her reserved state, looking for all the world like she wasn't about to jump on him and tear the answers she wanted right out of him. As she looked at him expectantly, Naruto considered what he should ask. Well, why did you tell me all this? I mean, there was no need for me to know all the reasons behind it, right? Raising an eyebrow and licking her lips slightly, Altair chuckled softly. You are sharper than you let on. That's a good trait to have if you are ever formally included in the 10 saints. No, there wasn't a need to tell you this, but I did because I wanted you to know the council's motives. I wanted you to know why they were going to test you. I wanted you to be aware of them. Naruto's eyes thinned slightly. Really, won't you get in trouble for this though? Sitting up straighter, an almost haughty look crossed her lidded eyes. Why would I get in trouble for something like this? I am a member of the council. I may do as I wish so long as it doesn't directly influence anything the council has or is going to decide. My telling you this has no effect on them. Naruto regarded the woman for a moment. Something was not quite right with her explanation, but for some reason, Naruto could not pinpoint the problem. So what does that mean for you? What will you get out of this? It's rare that someone simply gives out information just because. Altair's eyes took on a calculating look as she gazed upon the blonde. It passed shortly and was replaced by a warm smile. Why? Because you interest me, Uzumaki Naruto. I merely wish to get to know you and have you as an ally considering how powerful you are. You never do know when you would need a friend to call on, and I would most love to have you as that friend. I do hope you remember me as a friend to call on if you are ever in a spot of bother too. That instantly took away a lot of the built-up resistance to the woman that had risen. Despite his caution of her, she wanted to be his friend, someone who she could call on in a time of need. It didn't matter who it was, if they wished to befriend the blonde, he accepted them with open arms. Feeling an unbidden smile tug at his lips, he let his gaze soften slightly. Well, if you're looking for a friend to count on, you can definitely count on me. No matter who they are, if my friends need help, I'd go to hell and back for them. Her smile widened more at Naruto's deceleration and she nodded happily. That is wonderful to hear. Standing, she bowed her head slightly. I look forward to working with you in the future then. For now though, let's get you back to the council building. You must receive a badge of recognition for being inducted into the 10 Saints. Letting a true smile break through, Naruto jumped up grinning like a loon. Hell yeah! Show me the goods. Laughing, the mysterious woman then began walking from him, looking over her shoulder ever so slightly as he began to follow. Naruto tugged at the fabric the badge was now attached to, located just beneath his collar and a little to the right. It was a beautiful little piece of work, amazingly well crafted and incredibly rare. It was a perfect circle with a royal blue background. Over the top of that was an embossed silver cross, the X meeting perfectly in the center. What looked like the leaves of a clover poked out from the centerpiece, one leaf for each quadrant the badge was split into. A ring of silver encompassed them, separating them from the interlinked diamonds that circled the edge of the piece. All in all it was stunning, a true piece of skilled workmanship. Letting it go, Naruto stood up a little straighter in front of the council, a smile tugging the edges of his mouth repeatedly. Altair stepped back after fixing the badge as the spokesperson and one or two other council members watched on from behind them. The actual giving of the badge didn't require all council members present as the title had already been given. Most had already left to go do counselor things, but the few that remained clapped softly as Naruto's eyes thinned in joy. Taking Altair's place, the spokesperson stepped forward and locked eyes with the shorter blonde. I do hope you understand the prestigious position you have been given. May you honor the title well. Raising a hand, Naruto saluted the old man heartily. You can count on me. Not a facial muscle twitched despite Naruto's unorthodox acceptance and Guren stepped back. Very well. You will hear from us in the coming weeks. Until then, I wish you safe travels. Naruto saw Altair's smile widen fractionally when the tall man vaguely hinted at what was to come. Ignoring it, Naruto nodded. Take it easy till then, old man. This managed to produce a widening of the eyes from the senior mage, but anything else he felt about the lack of respect was kept in check. Nodding once, the man said no more and simply turned and slipped away. The other members disappeared as well, leaving behind only Altair, Naruto, and Makarov. A guide seemed to materialize from somewhere too, but that went by without comment. Looking down at the master, Naruto finally let his blinding grin break through while he pointed animatedly at the badge. Look at this. Look at it. Old man, isn't it awesome? I totally can't believe this. Sweat dropping at the boisterous blonde, Makarov waved a hand at him, trying to calm him. Yes, I can see that, Naruto. Well done, but we really must leave now if we want to reach home by nightfall. Realizing the afternoon was indeed late, the boy looked to his newest, if most mysterious friend and scratched his head. Smiling widely, he chuckled. Well, I'll see you around, I hope. Don't be a stranger, okay? You should come out to fairy tales sometime. Altair smiled and nodded slightly. I will if time permits, Naruto. Keep yourself out of trouble in the meantime, okay? Naruto shrugged. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. Laughing into a hand, the woman bowed her head slightly and turned as she took her leave. Watching her slide away, Naruto felt a nagging itch along his jawline. Scratching it, he looked down and saw Makarov looking up at him, a most perverse smile on his face. You sure work fast, don't you? Naruto poked a thumb at himself and closed his eyes proudly. I'm just awesome. Don't hate me for it. Hearing a bark of laughter, Naruto looked down and saw Makarov shaking his head in amusement. My boy, I actually think I'm rather envious of you. Walking through the door, Naruto stepped into pace beside the old man. A memory flickered in the blonde's eye as they made their way to the carriage and he looked down. So, what did they want to talk to you about? Naruto considered his current predicament as he tried to hold off the growing number of rather loud bodies that were piling up on his chest. Having walked into the makeshift guild, everyone within eyeshot saw his badge and promptly jumped him for details. The word spread fast, and within moments, Naruto had over 20 mages dogpiling him into the ground. Mira Jane was one of the first to see the badge, but unfortunately didn't get a chance to say anything to the blonde before he disappeared under the human pile. Once the numbers started slowing, she walked over cautiously and called out over the rabble on top of the teen. "You okay under there, Naruto?" a muffled voice replied. "That you, Mira-chan?" the barmaid giggled. "That it is. Would you be a dear and come out? I have something to give you." Hearing another muffled reply, Mira Jane stepped back as the mound of bodies shifted. Slowly, people began popping up from the top of the mound, all looking very surprised as they were pushed to the surface. Eventually, from the middle of the eruption popped Naruto. Not caring where he trod, Naruto walked down the tangled pile of limbs and bodies and came to a stop in front of the short woman. "What is it?" Smiling, she shook her head. "Close your eyes." The boy raised an eyebrow, but complied nevertheless. He waited a moment before something soft and warm pressed against his cheek. A light flush reached his cheeks as he realized what was happening. The wolf whistles and cat calls that accompanied the sensation only furthered his feeling of manliness. A grin quickly followed when a pair of arms slipped around his middle and replaced the kiss with a tight hug. Opening his eyes, he found himself looking into the deep blue eyes of his favorite waitress as she stunned him with a dazzling smile. Dipping her head into his chest, she let out a squeal of excitement and hugged him tighter. "I cannot believe that you managed to actually get a position amongst the 10 wizard saints. For someone so young, it's just unheard of. I cannot comprehend it. I'm totally lost for words." Placing his hands on his hips like the hero he felt he was, Naruto just pointed his nose to the sky and laughed out loud. "Don't even try and comprehend the unmatched majesty of Uzumaki, Naruto. Your brain will explode from the awesomeness." The statement brought a round of laughter from the guild as everyone doubled up at his bragging. Grinning mischievously, Naruto's eyes twinkled as he watched everyone break down. Hearing a call louder than the rest, the blonde saw Natsu struggling to pull himself free of the body pile that once rested on his chest. Realizing the object of his desire was watching him, Natsu literally blew up, sending mages flying across the room. "Naruto! No excuse, fight me now." Laughing as the teen held up a challenging fist, Naruto sighed half-heartedly but conceded nevertheless. "Well, sure, why not? A good spar would make for an interesting end to the day." The guild quietened for a split second before the whole room exploded into noise as the mages all began shouting excitedly at the prospect. Naruto began walking towards the exit before a mighty feminine voice roared above the rest. "Naruto!" Instantly everyone quietened as the strongest female in all of Fairy Tail walked forward, an uncharacteristic glint in her eyes. Everyone watched her mutedly as she walked up to Naruto. Stopping barely a foot from him, she looked up into his eyes and placed her hands on her hips. They then began a staring contest that seemed to freeze the guild in time. Eventually though, Erza broke it when she smirked excitedly. "Naruto, once done with Natsu, I request that you fight with me also." If the guild had been loud when Natsu called for a fight, it was now deafening. Naruto's grin and nod of acceptance only further raised the volume as sudden surprise betting rounds began to take form. Naruto also saw a few other guild members sizing him up, such as Elfman, Gray and Kana even, so he held up a hand and tried to call out over the noise. "Tomorrow! Wait until tomorrow!" While he didn't think they actually heard him, they could at least understand the gesture and nodded. An excited hand then grabbed his new shirt and began dragging him towards the door. Laughing as Natsu looked back at him eagerly, Naruto began to run as he followed the mage. Finding himself at Southgate Park again, Naruto looked up at the tree that Levi, Jet and Joy had been attached to. The scar marks on the bark has all but been removed, so no one had any prompts to remember that horrible day. Letting his vision slowly pan down, he looked at the large group that now surrounded him and Naruto. They were all cheering loudly in the growing shadows of twilight, each person's face lit up in excitement. Turning to look back at Natsu, Naruto was happy to see him squatting down, stretching his legs out. Following suit, Naruto gently eased his muscles into limber and shook himself out as he readied for the mage. Once finally ready, Natsu looked over and grinned. "Alright. I'm totally gonna kick your ass, so get ready for it. Oh, and this time, don't go sticking your fingers up my butt." A number of loud barks of laughter filled the air as a few mages remembered Natsu telling them of his first loss to the blonde ninja. Erza had decided to ref the match and was watching on keenly. Checking both participants, she nodded before bringing her hand down in a sharp chop. Begin. Naruto didn't have to wait for anything as Natsu instantly commenced the attack. Again he attacked recklessly, wild and powerful punches flying in from all conceivable angles, desperately looking for a break in Naruto's defense. There was none to be found however, and Naruto grinned as he pushed back. Sliding through a hammer fist from the Dragon Slayer, Naruto found himself nose to nose with the teen and grinned as he saw Natsu's eyes widen. Gripping his overcoat, Naruto pivoted on the balls of his feet and flung Natsu over his shoulder directly at the big tree. The fiery mage easily righted himself as expected though, his feet touching down solidly on the bark before pushing off powerfully. He cried out in excitement as he flew towards Naruto, his fist raised and encased in a large flame. Chuckling as the boy shot towards him, Naruto merely took several steps back and watched on in amusement as the mage literally buried himself deep into the ground. When the dust cleared, Naruto chuckled when he saw Natsu's legs kicking around as he tried to pull his head from the solid dirt. Walking over, Naruto grabbed one leg and easily pulled the teen from the earth. Laughing as he spat out a few rocks, Naruto gave him a helpful shake to remove any stubborn clumps of dirt. Lifting him up to see his eyes, Naruto smirked. Ready to give up? Natsu just grinned widely and exploded into flame in response. Not even. I'm just getting warmed up. An unsuspected kick then smashed into Naruto's head, sending him careening away into the rapidly scattering crowd. Bouncing a few times, Naruto managed to anchor a hand into the ground and pulled himself to a stop. Rubbing his cheek as a bruise rapidly formed, Naruto chuckled as he eyed the still flaming mage. It hadn't been long since that first fight, but he could definitely tell Natsu had grown stronger since then. Standing up, Naruto ignored his aching cheek and smirked. Attacking Natsu this time, Naruto forced the boy to defend, pushing him just hard enough so that he was struggling to move fast enough to dodge and block the strikes. Despite the hectic pace, Natsu managed to hold off Naruto for nearly a full 20 seconds before a palm thrust to his sternum sent him tumbling backwards in a cloud of dust. Knowing the boy still had more to give, Naruto jumped high in the air and extended his feet as he aimed to land on him. The height of the jump was enough that Natsu could escape, but still fast enough that he would be pushed to make it in time. Grinning as he saw the flame mage widened his eyes in shock, Naruto pulled his toes back as he came in for the stomp. Seeing Natsu roll just out of range in time, Naruto landed lightly and pirouetted gracefully, extending a kick that just managed to catch the teen to the soft part of his stomach. Totally unsuspecting the kick as he jumped to his feet, Natsu coughed loudly as all the air was forced from his lungs, sending him rolling backward, clutching his chest as he tried to breathe. Jogging over, Naruto knelt beside the boy as the crowd around them began to cheer wildly. Grinning as Natsu wheezed helplessly, Naruto took his hands and placed them on his pink head. Here, lay like this with your arms up. It opens up your airways. Trust me. Happy floated over from the crowd and landed beside his friend, patting his face in comfort. It's okay Natsu, I know you can't talk right now so I'll say I give up for you. You didn't look as pathetic as I expected though. You managed to last a little while before Naruto destroyed you. Chuckling as the unintentionally abrasive cat consoled his friend, Naruto shook his head when Natsu wheezed out something that sounded like an attempt at an angry shout. Oi, focus on breathing, not fighting. Nodding slightly as he tried to regain his breath, Naruto stood up and looked to Erza. She grinned at him, raising a hand. Naruto wins. Now. Stepping forward, the female mage eyed him almost hungrily. Someone please remove Natsu and everyone stand back. I wish to be able to have as much fun as possible. The crowd quietened a little as Elfman and Gray came forward and shifted Natsu out of danger. Whispers began filtering through the mages as they all excitedly waited for the match to begin. Hearing a loud call, Naruto looked over and sighed. It seemed Kana had decided to start up a betting pool, again, and already had several mages throwing down wads of money with more running up every second. Walking to their starting positions, Erza then called out to mages despite never taking her eyes of Naruto's. Who will ref our match? I will, if only to make sure you don't destroy anything. Looking over in mild surprise, Erza's face softened and she chuckled. A fine idea, master. This means I can let loose a little more though. Sweat dropping, Makarov scratched his cheek. Just make sure you don't go too overboard, okay? Cracking her knuckles, Erza dropped down into an easy split, actually lifting one leg off the ground to achieve a greater stretch. I shall try, master. Some slightly impure thoughts began to enter Naruto's mind when he saw the mage's impressive flexibility, but he banished them until later. Thinking about something like that now would just end up with those legs wrapped around his neck as they choked him into unconsciousness. Waiting for the mage to finish, Naruto looked around as the crowd began calling out, some encouraging him while others supported Erza. Despite the differences in opinion though, one thing was certain, and that was that this fight was going to be impressive. Standing, Erza smirked and began to glow as her magic took over her body. Her first lot of clothing disappeared for a moment before a new set of fabrics wrapped around her. The light faded, revealing Erza now standing in cheetah-printed armor. The bra, shoulder plates, knee pads and even the fluffy ears now attached to her head had the distinctive print on them. Blue arm warmers covered her forearms, a loop around each middle finger to stop them sliding around. A pair of bikini-length leather short shorts covered her modesty, a strange knee-length cape hanging from her belt. Mid-shin-length metal shoes covered her feet, but the armor itself looked segmented and light. From the top of them rose blue stockings that were colored the same as her arm warmers, stopping midway up her thighs. A single short-range sword was clasped in her right hand, the actual guard being a deep red. Pointing the sword at Naruto, Erza smirked. I'll let you know the properties of this requip as foreknowledge. I don't wish to hurt you too much after all. Naruto chuckled and tilted his head to the side. How kind of you. Smirking wider, she placed her free hand on her hip. This is my flight armor. I realized you have quite some speed behind you after witnessing how easily you toyed with Natsu. Stories I heard from Levi also reinforce this. It's a shame they have been ordered bed rest, as they would have enjoyed this fight. Because of this though, I wish to test just how fast you really are. Smiling passively, Naruto withdrew a scroll. Channeling chakra into his hand, he swiped it over the matrix on the paper and in a puff a kunai appeared. Tucking the scroll away, he twirled the tool around for a second before holding it out in a reverse grip. Raising an eyebrow, Erza pointed at the kunai. It is an interesting trick to store your tools in such an object, but it is rather cumbersome. Surely there must be a faster way to requip? Naruto looked down at the kunai and shrugged. There was one girl from my home that could do all kinds of crazy things with weapons and scrolls that I could never figure out. I never really tried to though. Nodding, Erza hummed. Indeed. Perhaps tomorrow then we could work on something that would increase your requip speed. Grinning, Naruto nodded happily. Yeah, I'm keen. Smiling back, Erza lowered her center of gravity. Until then though, you'll find that as a disadvantage in this fight. Naruto's smile just widened. Guess I'll have to rely on everything else I can do then. Looking to the master, they both nodded. Sighing worriedly at what was to come, Makarov gave them each one last stern look. Alright, I want this fight kept to this park. Do not destroy anything, or I will be forced to punish you both. Are we clear? Glancing over at Erza, the blonde was rather surprised to find the woman actually begin to sweat slightly before swallowing a lump that seemed to appear in her throat. Why yes, master. Whistling quietly to himself, Naruto was quite sure he didn't want to find out what this punishment was if it was enough to scare even Erza into submission. Nodding at the old man, Naruto reassured him. No worries, it'll stay right here. Nodding once, Makarov grinned. Good. With that out of the road, you may now begin. Turning to look back at Erza, the blonde's eyes widened as he saw Erza suddenly in his face, screaming out as she brought a leg in high for a debilitating head kick. Ducking on instinct, the blonde could swear he felt his hair pulled with how close she'd come to ending the fight. Kicking a leg out from his crouch, Naruto watched as Erza just barely avoided the attack by falling into a cartwheel, making sure to try her luck again with another kick. Rolling sideways, Naruto felt the ground he'd just been sitting on crunch as the powerful attack broke through the crust. Lashing out, Naruto used the slight distraction to flip up onto his fingers and handspring back to a safe distance. Now able to take a breather, Naruto swallowed a small, awe-inspired gasp as he watched the woman straighten up confidently. The surrounding crowd were going ballistic and Naruto couldn't blame them. Standing up himself, Naruto could not believe that whole exchange had taken all of 1 second. Placing a hand on her hip, Erza hummed approvingly. Well done, you have proven to be as fast as I expected. Not many people can say they've dodged my first attack. Chuckling, Naruto took a breath and exhaled slowly. Yeah, I can see why. That really took me by surprise. Closing his eyes for a moment, Naruto centered himself and brought his raging adrenaline under control. Finding his calm, he opened his eyes and smirked. Alright, let's try that again, shall we? Erza just smirked before both fighters disappeared from sight. Brief clangs and solid thumps began sounding out across the area as both the ninja and mage flashed from one end of the park to the other in a series of collisions. Everyone watching were screaming their lungs out as they struggled to follow the intense fight happening right before their eyes. Many also jumped back as they felt a gust of wind pass mere inches from them as the two fighters flickered past them. With Naruto, he had already managed to nick Erza a couple of times with his kunai, his current speed being ever so slightly better than hers. The woman was putting up a fantastic fight, however, as the speed she wielded her sword with was enough to make even the greatest samurai jealous. Charging in again, Naruto watched as Erza grabbed the sword in a double grip and lifted it above her head. Crossing his fingers at the last moment, Erza's eyes widened in surprise as she swung down into a cloud, two identical Narutos dashing out and around behind her. Pivoting on her leading foot, the red head swung out only to find a pair of hands wrap themselves firmly around her wrist. Flowing with the movement easily though, Erza lifted her feet off the ground and placed them into the blonde's face before kicking off powerfully. He grimaced in pain before exploding into a puff of smoke as the woman flew away, her back facing the ground. Realizing the real Naruto was still around, Erza tried to alter her flight path, but it was too late. A set of arms wrapped around her middle from below and she felt an enormous tug on her body as she was rapidly pulled to a stop. Her momentum was redirected into the ground and the woman managed to bring her arms over her head just in time as she smashed into the ground. Groaning as the earth gave way under her block, she felt the arms let go of her waist and then felt vibrations through the earth as Naruto jumped away. Flipping her body over to rest her knees on the ground, Erza pulled her torso from the earth and looked up at the smirking blonde. Running her fingers through her hair, she quickly removed the larger pieces of dirt before frowning at her opponent. You do realize that move you pulled before wasn't very fair. The teen just laughed annoyingly before winking at her. My dear Erza-chan, I'm a ninja. I don't play fair. I've been trained not to. Erza seemed to frown angrily for a moment, but then a thoughtful look crossed her face and she smiled. Alright, I'll stop holding back then. Naruto's grin dropped slightly. That was holding back? Erza didn't say anything and charged. Readying himself for the woman, Naruto watched as her blinding speed carried her up to striking range within a second. What Naruto didn't expect was for the woman to flash yellow for a second and suddenly lash out with a mace. Not at all ready to dodge something that wide, Naruto crossed his arms and grunted as the solid lump of iron blew him backwards. Focusing on his chakra, Naruto pushed it into the ground and skidded to a stop far sooner than expected. Erza didn't predict this, however, and collided with the blonde as she chased after him. Exhaling with an oof, the two rolled across the ground before sliding to a stop. Finding Erza sitting on his chest, the redhead gripped Naruto's wrists and pushed them into the ground, glowing for a second and suddenly gaining several hundred kilos with a new outfit. Effectively pinning his arms to the ground, Naruto did the only thing he could think of. Raising both feet high, he flooded his legs with chakra and kicked down at the ground. Human-sized pieces of earth jumped into the air as Naruto easily broke into the earth. His body sunk as fissures underneath him upset the dirt and buckled the landscape. Hearing a surprised cry from Erza, Naruto bucked his hips up and overbalanced the girl. Grabbing at a foot that passed his vision, Naruto rolled over and lashed out before dragging Erza back under him. Finding her face down, he placed his hands into the small of her back and pushed off solidly, hearing her gasp as he flew backwards. Landing lightly, Naruto looked over at the hole cautiously. The speed she displayed when she requipped was nothing short of incredible. It was tough to change hand-held weapons that fast mid-battle, let alone a whole outfit. Seeing Erza pull herself from the dirt, Naruto grinned. You holding up okay? You nearly got me with that last one. Looking up at him through her fringe, Erza smirked. Oh yes, I'm doing fine. In fact, I'm having a great time. Glowing as she charged, Erza swung in with a pair of massive broadswords. Ducking low to escape the scissor-like action, Naruto dived forward to tackle the girl. She glowed briefly before reverting to her cheetah outfit and avoided the attack just in time. Naruto looked to the side as time seemed to slow down, the blonde now totally at the mage's mercy. Oh crap. Again, the woman flashed gold before what felt like a plank slapped into his back with a mighty crack. Crying out in pain, Naruto bounced off the ground before a kick into his stomach sent him sliding away. Ignoring his gut, Naruto gingerly stood up and lifted his shirt to have a look at his skin. A brilliant red mark in stark contrast to his pale skin crossed his back, the mages behind him bursting out into laughter when they saw it. Looking back over at Erza, Naruto whined at her, "Do you have any idea how much that hurt?" That was like an open-handed slap of death. Flicking her hair over her shoulder, Erza smirked. "Just be happy I didn't decide to cut you in half." Lowering his shirt, Naruto winced again as he touched the angry mark. Blinking away a tear at the corner of his eye, Naruto growled. It didn't matter if it would fade in another minute or so. That hurt. Crossing his fingers, Naruto glared at the confident woman. "Fine, take this then." Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. Suddenly, 30 clones surrounded Erza and the girl lowered her center, cautiously watching the blondes around her. Sensing an attack, she whirled around and raised a sword, only to see Naruto with his fingers crossed and an evil smirk plastered onto his face. Oiroku no Jutsu, Sexy Technique. The explosion of smoke followed by Naruto's buxom, not to mention naked alter ego, was the very last thing on Erza's mind as he attacked. Shocked into place, Erza's eyes widened as the blonde girl landed on her and instantly wrapped her arms and legs around the mage's waist. The massive breast that was firmly pressed into Erza's face didn't really help her thought process either. Thus, the rapid thumps of approaching feet didn't even compute until she found herself high in the air via a powerful punch. Eyes still wide, Erza looked around in panic as Naruto's closed in from all sides. They all were grinning widely as they raised their fists in preparation for the attack. Unable to really do anything, Erza clenched her eyes shut and awaited the impact. Instead of a round of bone-jarring punches though, the woman felt a gentle hand wrap around her waist and right her as she fell to the ground. Landing lightly, it was then Erza realized the knife positioned carefully under her chin. Slowly looking over her shoulder, Erza saw Naruto's grinning face staring back at her. Sighing in defeat, Erza smiled and hung her head. "I yield." Having watched the last few seconds of the fight in relative silence, the mages of Fairy Tail suddenly exploded into life, a massive cheer going off as well as a thunderous laugh at the way the guild's top female had been defeated. Removing his kunai, Naruto wriggled his eyebrows and quickly sealed it back into the scroll. Stepping back, Naruto looked down as Erza turned and extended a hand. "Good fight, Naruto. I look forward to another sometime." Taking the outstretched hand, the blonde shook solidly and nodded. "Yeah, I can't wait." Dropping the hand, Erza then took on a thoughtful look. "That attack with your female self though." Chuckling awkwardly, Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah, was a distraction technique I came up with when I was younger. I hope you aren't too cranky about that." Placing a hand to her chin, Erza instead replayed the move in her mind. "On the contrary, that was a very effective diversion. I may have to add it to my arsenal." Pausing for a second, it took Naruto a moment to realize what she just said. Really?" Looking up at him with a straight face, Erza nodded once. "Such an effective attack would be of most use." Sniffing up something wet in his nose, Naruto leant in and rested a hand on her shoulder. "Well, if you ever want to make sure it's effective enough, I'll gladly be your guinea pig. It takes more than just jumping on someone to fully unleash its distractive power." Smiling, Erza nodded. "Alright, I'll take you up on the offer. We shall begin training tomorrow." Naruto couldn't believe his luck. Just as the guild reached them, Naruto took off in a spurt of blood singing, "Life is good." Naruto sat back at the guild with several mages at the table around him, tissues stuffed up his nose as blood continued to leak out occasionally. The giddy smile on his face frustrated everyone though, because every time they'd ask him about it, he'd just shake his head and say, "Training." Natsu had quickly recovered and was now sitting as close to Naruto as he could possibly muster, hounding him for another fight. "So, you should fight me again. Like, tomorrow. It's too dark now, so what do you say?" Gray seemed to take offense to this as he was just as eager to try his luck against the formidable blonde. "Shut up for 1 second, you annoying lizard. You've already been thrashed, so go sit down in the corner like a good little reptile and at least wait a week before coming back to bother us all." Spinning around to face the ice mage, Natsu habitually rose to the challenge, flames seeming to explode behind his eyes in a rather painful-looking way. "Ha! Sit down yourself, we all know you'd get smashed by Naruto is half the time it took for him to beat me." I'm just taking your place so people have something interesting to watch. The temperature around the mage dropped to freezing in a second, his clothes also beginning to drop to the floor. Come on candle wax, keep pushing it. An opposing heat quickly rose to fight the cold snap. Watch where you tread, bastard. They were just about to fall down into another scrap when Elfman stepped in, his massive hands clamping down on their heads and lifting them into the air. While it is always manly to have a fight, I suggest you wait for the moment. Natsu, you had your go, so wait your turn. Gray, you may want to wait until after I fought Naruto anyway, so you have a slightly worn-out opponent. Glaring at the giant, they lashed out and sent him flying across the room with dual calls of, "Shut the hell up." Ignoring all this, Mikao and Wakaba were sitting opposite of Naruto, trying to glean details about what made him so starry-eyed. Come of Naruto, we heard something about you being Erza's new test dummy for something, so what is it? Most people scream in fear when asked. Naruto shook his head and smiled happily. Nah, I offered. It's a good position. Wakaba's eyebrows raised, his thin eyes showing off a slip of rare pupil. Do you have a death wish or something? No one offers to be Erza's training buddy. Except Natsu, but he's too dumb to work out. It hurts. The group ignored the angry call as Gray tackled Natsu into the ground, taking up where they left off before Elfman interrupted. Leaning back, Naruto laughed and looked to the sky in thought. No, this time it'll definitely be good. I have a hunch. So you won't tell us any more details? Naruto smiled and shrugged. What's to tell? Groaning as the blonde looped his answers again, Mikao and Wakaba looked at each other. We gotta find out what this is. Any ideas though? Turning to look through the crowd, the blue-haired man tried to spot anyone who could possibly help. He won't tell any of us males, so we'll need a girl to extract the information. Levy's not here, Erza, that kind of defeats the purpose. Lucy, she's more scared of Erza than anyone, I think. Who? Aha! Grabbing his friend's shoulder, Mikao dragged Wakaba to his feet and pulled him along. My friend, I just had an idea. Running over to Mira Jane, Mikao stopped before the beauty and looked down at her while giving her his most charming smile. Looking up with a raised eyebrow, Mira Jane could smell something fishy. What do you want? Laughing awkwardly, Mikao scratched his head. Aw, don't be like that, Mira. I actually wanted to ask a favor. You see, Naruto has this training session with Erza coming up, and we all know that's suicide. He won't tell us any details though, so we were wondering if you might be able to find out what it is. Closing her eyes, the ivory-haired girl shook her head. Nope. If Naruto doesn't want to share, who am I to interrupt? Visibly deflating, Mikao sighed. So you won't ask? Giggling, the girl turned away. Nope. I gotta run now, work's never done. Looking at the floor dejectedly, Mikao felt Wakaba place a consoling hand on his shoulder. Well, good idea, but it didn't work. Is there anyone else? Scanning the crowd, Wakaba frowned as he tried to see any potential candidates. Seeing a keg being lifted up high in the corner of the room, he grinned. I think I just solved your problem. Pulling his friend over, the sight of a leggy brunette came into view as she sunk a barrel of rum. Opening an eye as she heard them call out to her, she raised a hand in greeting. Yo, what's up? Dropping down into a spare seat beside Kana, Mikao and Wakaba cut straight to the chase. Well, we actually want to ask a favor. Naruto agreed to help out Erza with training and won't stop laughing about it. So either something really interesting is gonna happen or he's lost his mind. He won't tell us what though, so we were wondering if you could find out for us. Pausing mid-sip, Kana considered the question. She had also overheard something about that and was rather curious herself. This, however, presented an opportunity for extortion that she couldn't pass up. What's in it for me? Mikao thumped his hand on the barrel she was holding. A day's worth of booze and a massage at the local spa house. Kana stood up sharply. Bitchin'. Let's do this. Striding over towards her blonde target, Kana left the two men in her wake as she dropped into the seat beside Naruto. Leaning back as casually as she could manage, she looked over at her companion and smiled. Sup? Naruto looked back. Not much. She nodded. Cool. So Naruto, I hear you got a thing coming up with Erza. Like a training session or something. Naruto nodded, a happy smile sliding back onto his face. Sure do. It's gonna be awesome. Raising an eyebrow, the brunette pressured him. You do realize most people would run screaming from her if they were asked to do something like that? Naruto shrugged. Yeah, I know. I can handle myself well enough, and anyway, I offered to help. Eyes widening, Kana leaned in. This was less about the booze and more about her own curiosity now. Really? What on earth made you do that? Naruto's grin took a more goofy edge. Oh, she wants to learn a diversionary technique I created. I said I'd help her get it right. Frowning, Kana leant in. Yeah, but what? Naruto looked at the woman with a smirk. Just a simple distraction technique. If you want to come though, ask Erza. You could probably learn it too. Missing the perverse giggle, Kana looked around for Erza. Spotting the redhead over at the bar, Kana narrowed her eyes. She was currently at crossroads. On one hand, she was very interested in just what this diversionary technique was that Naruto was planning to teach Erza, but on the other hand, training with Erza was just asking to be laid up in bed for 2 or 3 days. Rolling the thought about in her mind for a few seconds, Kana nodded as she came to a decision. She could just come and watch. There's no way she'd get hurt if she was outside of the zone of destruction. Standing, she walked over to Erza and took a seat beside the powerful mage. Looking up, the redhead gave her a smile. Hello Kana, how are you? Good to see you away from the alcohol. Kana nodded. Yeah, I thought I might give it a break for a moment. Anyway, I just finished talking with Naruto and he told me you and him were going for some training tomorrow. Surprisingly, a blush sprung to Erza's cheeks and she looked a little self-conscious. Why yes. He has offered to help me with a powerful defensive technique. That slight stutter had Kana hook, line and sinker. She had to know what was going on. Leaning in, the brunette lowered her voice. So, can you tell me what it is? Naruto asked if I wanted to come along too. Erza's blush deepened and she looked down at the drink before her. Really now? Well, I cannot see a reason for you to not come. She then cast an appraising gaze over Kana and her blush spread. In fact, you may even be more suited to it than myself. Leaning back in surprise, Kana whistled quietly to herself. Whatever this was, it must have been right up her alley for even Erza to admit she had a better chance of doing whatever it was. Her mind was pretty much made up for her when she heard that statement. Nodding, she pushed herself to her feet. Thanks Erza. Where will you be training tomorrow? I'll swing past. Staring at her drink, Erza nodded. Oh okay. I look forward to tea training with you. I believe it will be somewhere secluded. Raising a questioning eyebrow, Kana just shrugged. Okay, I'll go ask Naruto. Turning, Kana slid through the mages milling around as she headed for Naruto. Tapping the bench in front of him, she drew his attention. Alright boy, I'll bite. Erza seems to think I'd be suited for whatever this is, so where are you gonna hold this? The tissues stuffed up Naruto's nose began bleeding red again as he grinned up at her happily. Oh yeah, you'd more than be suited for it. It's pretty specific training though, so I'll tell you where it is tomorrow so no one butts in. Frowning curiously, Kana had no choice but to accept it. Sighing, she stood up straight and turned back to where Mikao and Wakaba were sitting. Fine, but it better be worth it or you'll regret taking me away from my drink. Sweating slightly, Naruto waved a hand at her. No problem. You may want to bring a flask then, just in case. Smirking at him, the tall brunette left Naruto to himself. Running a finger along his collar, Naruto swallowed. Tomorrow was going to be awesome, no two ways about it. How awesome it was though, all depended on whether or not Kana decided to bash his head in for the so-called training. Thinking over it again though, Naruto shook his head and resolved himself. Erza asked for it and Kana wanted in. He was completely innocent here. Smiling happily, the blonde leant back onto to find himself pulled off his chair and into Natsu and Gray's fight. Several sets of shoes stomped into him before the blonde growled angrily and grabbed a foot in each hand. Standing, Naruto twirled a full 360 degrees before releasing the teens and sending them flying across the room with a scream and a crash. Stretching his shirt out, Naruto looked at it and sighed when he saw the result. It was already dirty after the afternoon's fights, but now it was more a smeared brown than cream. Hearing a giggle, the blonde looked up and saw Mira Jane walking towards him. Oh my, did you get dragged into one of Natsu and Gray's fights? Naruto rolled his eyes. Oh, you could tell. She nodded and pointed at his face. The footprint on your forehead kinda gave it away. Crossing his eyes upwards in an effort to see the mark, Naruto raised a sleeve and rubbed it away. Lowering it with a sigh, he looked at his clothes in annoyance. This sucks. These are like brand new and they already need a massive wash. I only just got them today, damn it. Frowning, Mira Jane placed a finger to her lips. That's true, but you still only have one other set of clothes, don't you? How have you managed all this time with only them? Naruto shrugged. I'm resourceful. Wouldn't be much of a ninja if a few dirty clothes made me squirm. The barmaid nodded. Indeed, it would be pretty weak. That aside, would you like some new clothes? Only having one set must get annoying, even for a ninja like yourself. Crossing his arms, Naruto nodded. Yeah, it doesn't really bother me too much, but I have like no money to buy anything. I've been living off your goodwill since I arrived here. Smiling brightly, Mira Jane tipped her head to the side. Oh, that's no bother. We've been keeping a tab for you since you arrived. It's obviously been severely discounted since you're new here, but once you start taking a few jobs you'll be able to pay us back. Blinking with wide eyes several times, Naruto then narrowed one eye slightly. Really? Mira Jane nodded. Yup. Just be happy you weren't picked up by any other guild because I've heard they charge even their mages full-priced meals. Sighing morosely as the information sunk in, Naruto dropped his head. Of course it was. Why didn't I think of that? Laughing happily, Mira Jane patted his arm. Not to worry, you can make the jewels up in only a job or two. The tab isn't very high. At least that was some good news. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself staring at his dirty shirt again. Looking back up at the barmaid, Naruto raised an eyebrow. So, if I were to get these clothes, does that mean they'd go on my tab? Mira crinkled her nose cutely as she had to think. Well, usually yes, but after your promotion to one of the 10 wizard saints, consider this a present from yours truly. She winked at him and giggled as he breathed a sigh of relief. Well, thanks Mira-chan. When do you think we could go looking then? 'Cause I have no idea where any decent clothing stores are. Walking up beside him, the girl gently swung her hips out and bumped her side off of Naruto's. Oh, if you're kind enough to create a few Narukos to keep things going here, we could go right now. It's late night shopping so we'd have hours of fun ahead of us. Something in the way she said fun elicited a shiver that ran down his spine. Despite the feeling, Naruto just nodded and in a poof created 3 females all ready to man the stations. Grinning happily at the blonde, Mira Jane headed back towards the bar. Oh! Twirling around, she lifted up onto her toes and kissed Naruto on the cheek again. Dropping back down, she gave him a wink. Just because. Watching her walk away properly this time, Naruto ignored the few raunchy calls from a few males behind him and smirked. It seemed she was feeling pretty liberal with the kisses today. Not that he was going to complain, and who knew, a shopping trip might even get him another one or two if he behaved. Chapter 18. The blonde sat outside as he waited for his escort to arrive. Huffing softly, he wondered what it was with women. All Mira Jane had to do was take off the apron and come out, yet she still managed to make it take over 15 minutes. Another thing that irked him was this weird presence he could sense floating around the guild. He thought he could see someone from time to time, but whenever he went to search for them, he found nothing. He was almost at the point of going sage and forcefully hunting down whatever it was, but that was effort he just didn't have right now. Hearing a merry goodbye though, he turned and looked up as the girl walked from the makeshift guild. Smiling down at him, she tilted her head to the side. All set. Let's go. Pulling himself to his feet, Naruto dusted down his filthy clothes as best he could and nodded. A sudden thought occurred to Naruto though, and he leveled a gaze at Mira Jane. So, about the payment I owe. Looking up innocently, she blinked. Yes. Frowning, Naruto cupped his chin. Well, how long has Naruto been working here? I mean, surely she must have been paying off some of my debt. Mira Jane blinked in surprise. You know what? I didn't even think of that. Sweat dropping, Naruto narrowed an eye. How couldn't you? I mean, she is me. You've even seen me create her like, how many times? Blushing embarrassedly, the girl giggled. Oh, I'm so absent-minded sometimes. I'll remind the master. He's even worse than me. Naruto sighed. He didn't think even he was that bad. Feeling an arm slip through his own, Naruto looked down and saw Mirajane now hanging from his side, beginning to pull on him towards the town. Come on then. We don't want to be late now. Grumbling something about Mirajane taking forever just to get changed, the blonde let himself get pulled into the lights. Despite having been here for a while now, Naruto still hadn't ventured too deeply into the town for the sole purpose of entertainment and window shopping. He also hadn't set foot in there at night either, so everything that was going on was quite the experience. There were a couple of roadside vendors that were selling various foods, most of them unhealthy if the unholy amounts of sauce they were being flooded with were any indication. The lights that were strung up between the carts also gave the streets a merry feel to it that could lift anyone's mood. On top of that, the numerous couples that filled the street gave it a young romance feel too. Funnily enough though, for the first time Naruto didn't feel out of place. Even though they were only here on a shopping trip, having a cover girl like Mirajane hanging off his arm could let him pretend that he was out on a date. As he walked along, the blonde noticed several people along the way pointing at him and whispering, some smiling happily at him and even waving. Not quite sure what the fuss was over, Naruto awkwardly smiled and waved back. The girl by his side picked up on his confusion and poked him. What's wrong? Don't you like the attention? Looking down, Naruto shook his head. No, it's not that, I just don't actually know what I'm getting it all for. Raising an incredulous eyebrow, Mirajane patted his chest, right over his badge. It's because of that. What, did you think that rank was only important to mages or something? Naruto blinked and looked down at his chest. Yeah, I didn't think civilians would care about something like that here. They never really did back at my home unless it was an exhibition. Frowning, Mirajane retracted her hand. That's odd. I'd have thought a jump to such a prominent position would have garnered a lot of attention. Naruto crinkled his nose in thought. Well, they do if a new ninja leader is elected. He's the most powerful ninja in the whole village, so it's a big thing. Mira nodded. Well, this is something like that. You're recognized as one of the 10 most powerful people in Fiori. Why wouldn't they celebrate something like that? Pursing his lips, Naruto crossed his arms behind his head as he looked to the sky. I never really thought of it like that. Rolling her eyes, Mira reached up and flicked his nose. Well, you should have, you silly thing. What am I to do with you? Rubbing his nose, Naruto smirked. Love me, care for me, feed me, nurture me, you know, those kind of things. Sighing good-naturedly, Mira shook her head. That's what I have been doing ever since you arrived here, isn't it? Naruto nodded acceptingly after a moment. Yeah, I guess you have. Keep up the good work. Slapping his arm, Mirajane chuckled. Stop that. Oh, I also think you have a fan. Looking down, Naruto saw a little boy of about 8 years and his mother walking forward with a sorcerer's magazine and a marker. He paused for a moment until his mum knelt down and urged him on quietly. Sucking up all the courage he could muster, he walked forward hesitantly. Hey. You're the new wizard saint, yeah? Naruto grinned and nodded. Yup, sure am. The boy's eyes lit up and he pushed the book out. Can you sign this then? I think you're really cool. Chuckling embarrassedly, Naruto took the book. Yeah, okay. Realizing Naruto was stuck, Mirajane knelt in. What's your name? So Naruto knows who his biggest fan is. She winked at the boy, which caused him to blush. Rain. Looking up at Naruto, she saw him hesitate for a moment before scratching something down. Handing it back, Naruto smiled as he saw the boy's face light up. The boy frowned then as something didn't seem right. Turning it over, he pointed at the squiggle. Why didn't you sign as Orange Rocket? Visibly blanching, Naruto shook his head. That's someone else. Frowning, he stared at Naruto for a while before nodding slowly. I guess, you don't even have any orange on. You'd look better if you did, but, grinning happily, Naruto ruffled his hair. I bet I would too. Nice to see you know good colors. Take care now. Smiling happily, the kid waved at him before turning and running back to his mum and proudly showing her the signature. The woman looked over and smiled thankfully to Naruto before leading the boy away by his hand. A warm feeling rose in his chest and a natural smile graced his lips as he watched them leave. It was really nice to be appreciated for things every now and then. Feeling a tug on his arm, Naruto was brought back from his thoughts and looked down to see Mirajane pulling him towards a clothing store. Here's a nice place. They've got good quality clothes and are usually pretty well priced too. Shrugging, Naruto let himself be led inside. Once in there though, Naruto frowned. Something wasn't right. Narrowing his eyes suspiciously as Mira Jane led him into the depths, he suddenly realized the problem. He was the only male in the store. He leant down near his guide's ear as he looked around. "Hey Mira-chan, why am I the only guy here?" The girl shrugged as she stopped near a section marked men. "I'm not sure. A lot of us girls wonder as well." Looking around one last time as Mira Jane began flicking through the shirts before her, Naruto decided it must have just been something unique to Magnolia. Watching as his companion began pulling clothes from the rack, Naruto's sweat dropped. Nothing she was pulling out matched his tastes. Mira-chan, shouldn't you ask me what I like first before selecting what I'm trying on?" Shaking her head, the girl shushed him. "No, leave that to me. I'll find you something that will suit you beautifully." It was then Naruto began suspecting there could be a legitimate reason he was the only man in the store. "But Naruto, there's still more we can look at. Please, just one more." Growling as he carried a disappointed Mira Jane out of the store over his shoulder, Naruto lifted up the several plastic bags packed with clothes, most of which weren't even his. "No. No, one more. We've been in there for hours." The blonde was now in a well-fitted, deep blue shirt with orange flames of varying hues rising up from the bottom hem. His long pants were also a deep blue, bordering more towards black than the actual color though. It wasn't much of an upgrade in clothing, but at least they were clean. Pouting and crossing her arms in a huff, Mira Jane watched as several couples giggled to themselves as they watched the blonde carry her away from the clothing shop. It wasn't hours, it was barely pushing one. Despite being spoken softly, Naruto still heard it. Well, it felt like hours. "I want to do something else now, I'm over searching through shirts and stuff." Sighing unhappily, Mira Jane kicked her legs gently and ruffled his hair. There, Naruto, it's all over then. Can you please put me down now?" Realizing he had been carrying her a fair way, Naruto leant down and dropped her to her feet. Straightening, he looked around and found himself on a walkway beside one of the rivers that snaked its way through the town. The lights here were dimmer too to allow the moonlight to reflect back brighter from the water's surface. A boat slowly floated down with the current, a pair of lovers snuggled up in the back as a man gently steered the boat along. Hearing a dreamy sigh beside him, Naruto looked down and saw Mira Jane watching the scene with lidded eyes. She also seemed to start leaning into him unconsciously, her arms gently snaking their way around his and pulling it into her chest. Chuckling, Naruto shook his head as he realized her desire. "Hey, Mira-chan, you wanna go on a boat ride?" Blinking several times as she snapped out of her trance, the girl giggled awkwardly and stepped back, a hand behind her head. "Oh. I didn't mean to do that, sorry. I just haven't been on one in such a long time that I kind of lost myself for a moment there." Naruto shrugged and smiled. "That doesn't worry me. If you wanna go on a boat ride, then let's go. It's not like we're only out here for me." Mira Jane sighed. "I'd like to, but I don't really have enough after the clothes." Looking over as the boat floated away, he raised an eyebrow. "How much does it cost?" The girl shrugged. "It's been that long that I can't remember." Rolling his eyes with a laugh, Naruto began pulling Mira Jane along after him as he ran after the boat. "Well, it might have dropped in price by now. Stop wishing the boat ride will happen and make it happen." The blonde's infectious personality made quick work of her slight hesitation and with a laugh began running beside him. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Hugging the boat owner, Mira Jane jumped in and sat up the front of the boat, excitedly looking out over the water. It turned out the fee was as steep as the barmaid had expected, but because word had gotten around of Naruto's promotion to one of the 10 saints, the boat owner had decided to give them a ride for free. Letting Naruto settle down on the back seat, he pushed the boat off and began guiding it down the river. "You know, I've never had a Wizard of the 10 Saints ride in my boat. I'm pretty sure no one else has either. What made you pick mine?" Hearing the man speak, Naruto leaned back and looked at the upside-down man. "Well, Mira-chan wanted to go for a boat ride and yours was the first we found. The fact you let us get on for free was a big part of it too." The blonde chuckled. "We don't have too much money at the moment." Raising his eyebrows, the boatman shook his head. "That's hard to believe. I'd expect you'd have heaps from all the high-level assignments you'd have undertaken." Hearing a happy cry from Mira Jane as a fish jumped up, Naruto looked over and grinned as she reached out to try touch it. I haven't actually taken that many. I was just in the right place at the right time. The man nodded and guided the boat back into the middle of the river. You're a lucky man then. If you ever need any spare cash though, be sure to look me up in the missions list in the guild. I put requests in from time to time. Grinning, Naruto gave him thumbs up. I'll make sure to. Hearing another happy giggle from Mira, the two men looked over. Naruto chuckled while the boatman eyed him up. Leaning down, he lowered his voice so only Naruto could hear. So, is Mira-Jane your girlfriend then, young master? Looking up, Naruto blinked a few times. No. We're just friends. Why'd you say that? Raising an eyebrow, the man looked over at the girl playing in the water. You can't tell me you missed the way she looks at you. It's written all over her face, even if she does control herself well. Looking back at the ivory-haired girl, Naruto pursed his lips. I just thought that was her normally. Come to think of it, Erza did say something about that though. Chuckling, the boatman stood up. Just wait then. See what happens. Looking up at the man curiously, Naruto waited for him to say more. He didn't though, so the blonde just turned back to watch as Mira-Jane now rested her head on her hands, wide eyes watching as the houses and streets lazily drifted by. As his own eyes began drifting around to look at the sights, a very pleasant noise began to drift into his consciousness. Looking around for its source, Naruto eventually trained his eyes back on Mira-Jane. She was trailing a finger in the water, head turned to the side and humming gently to herself. Leaning in to listen, her voice stopped as she noticed Naruto move. As she looked over, Naruto widened his eyes. No, don't stop. You have a really nice voice. Smiling gently, she nodded and looked back down into the water. Her voice picked up where it left off and Naruto smiled happily. Closing his eyes, he leant back into the seat and let the melody float over him. The beautiful tune seemed to dip and weave its way around his head, in through his ears and sinking into his mind. The waves of her soft voice seemed to match the waves of the water tapping against the boat, and within minutes, Naruto could feel himself falling asleep. It certainly wasn't a prime resting spot, but anything was comfortable when listening to that voice. Just as he was about to drift off, Mira-Jane stopped humming. Opening a lazy eye, Naruto looked over as the girl shifted from the front of the boat and sat beside him. Smiling down at him, she wriggled in. You look really uncomfortable like that. Come on, sit up for a moment. Frowning, Naruto complied. He felt Mira-Jane shuffle in behind him and then found a set of hands grasp his shoulders and gently coax him back down. His eyes widened when he realized his head was now positioned in the girl's lap. Looking up at her uncomfortably, she shook her head. Just relax, okay? His brow furrowed slightly, but as she began humming again his muscles relaxed and he took a deep breath. A movement behind Mira-Jane caught his eye and he looked up to see the boatman smirking down at him in an "I told you so" way. Ignoring him, Naruto then felt a set of fingers start running their way through his hair. No one had ever done anything like that for the blonde before, so initially he tensed up in surprise. The rushed hushing from Mira-Jane however calmed him quickly enough. She looked down at him in slight concern as he stared up at her curiously. Just relax for me, alright? It'll feel nice, I promise. Still slightly hesitant about the new development, Naruto decided to trust the girl and closed his eyes. The feeling started up again, and once he let himself relax into it, he was incredibly pleased he listened to her. Nothing anyone had ever done to him before felt quite like this. She seemed to like gently running her nails along his skin and then draw her fingers back through his hair. Sighing happily as his body relaxed of its own accord, the blonde could only pray nothing bad suddenly jumped up because he was so not prepared for anything right now. Her humming then started up again and Naruto instantly found his mind wandering. Her voice seemed to carry his thoughts through different worlds, each more surreal and dreamlike than the last. He fought off the feeling of sleep though because Naruto wanted to cherish the moment. No one had ever given him attention like this and he had no idea when it would happen again, so he sure as hell didn't want to sleep through it. Time seemed to drag on as Mira-Jane hummed softly to him, never stopping her tender ministrations. It could have been hours for all the blonde knew when he hazily realized the singing had stopped. Opening one eye a tiny slit, he looked up and saw Mira-Jane smiling down at him beautifully. Through his sleep-filled mind, he unconsciously thought she looked like an angel. Her hair glowed silver in the moonlight and framed her soft face perfectly. Her lidded eyes started down at him with an expression he couldn't quite place, But his sleepy mind couldn't be bothered trying to work out what it was. It seemed she thought he was asleep though, as she had taken to running her other hand up and down his arms. A tiny smile pulled at his lips at the sensation, and he noticed it elicited a small, content sigh from the girl. He closed his eye again and shifted slightly so he was closer to her warmth. His eyes then drew open when he felt something pressing down on his forehead. Looking up, he saw Mira Jane had leant in and was kissing his forehead tenderly. Watching her, a very light blush rose to his cheeks as he thought of the last person to do that to him. Tsunade-chan had all but entrusted him with becoming Hokage in that kiss, so for Mira Jane to mimic that must have meant she was trusting him with something too. Leaning back, Mira Jane's eyes widened as she saw Naruto looking up at her. Blushing in the moonlight, she turned her face away bashfully. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you were awake." Naruto chuckled drowsily. "I knew you didn't. I don't mind though. I wouldn't have said no anyway." Looking back at the sleepy teen in her lap, Mira Jane smiled gently and slowly leaned in again. Naruto and Mira Jane now found themselves on top of the building next to Fairy Tail, their eyes cast out over the town as it slowly drifted off to sleep. Turning his eyes skyward, Naruto looked up at the strange constellations. The stars above seemed to grow a little bit brighter with every light that was switched off, replacing the artificial light with the soft glow of their own. A cool breeze suddenly picked up as they sat in silence, its crisp embrace encircling the two people on the roof. Shivering, Mira Jane rubbed her arms as the cold bit into her. Shuffling over, she huddled up against Naruto's side and sighed. Looking down at his company, Naruto's eyes softened and he chuckled as he wrapped an arm around her. "It getting a bit too chilly for you, hey?" Shaking her head, Mira Jane leaned in and rested her head on the blonde's shoulder. "Not now, it's not. I'm just right. You're really warm." Naruto shrugged and looked back up at the sky. "I suppose so. I never really noticed the cold unless it was snowing." They then fell back into silence, simply enjoying the other's company. Naruto sighed as his mind began to wander, his thoughts traveling back to his home and friends. He dearly missed them and was still incredibly worried about them, but for reasons he couldn't seem to control, he was feeling his desire to return slowly shrinking. By no means did he not want to go back, that was still his number one goal. He just found other things beginning to come into his line of focus and slowly detracting from his single-minded objective. Looking down as the girl beneath his arm wriggled in closer, a melancholy smile slipped onto his face. It was people like her that were going to make it hard to go home. They had shown him such kindness in the short time he had been here that he had to find a way to return after fixing up the elemental nations. Feeling his gaze upon her, Mira Jane looked up at her protector from the cold. She quickly noticed the regretful smile on his face, the look so out of place to his usual bright grin that he wore. Frowning worriedly, she sat up. "What's wrong?" Naruto shook his head and laughed as he was caught out. "Oh, sorry, personal thoughts." Mira Jane shook her head. "Tell me anyway." Taking a breath, Naruto looked out over the town. "I'm just thinking about having to go home. I know I have to, but I'll miss you guys." Swallowing a sudden lump in her throat, Mira Jane shook her head again. "But, you'll be able to come back, yeah?" Naruto's usual determined grin quickly came back at this, reliving the girl somewhat. "Hell yeah. I wouldn't want to never be able to see you again." He chuckled and looked down at her. "Besides, you got a promise to keep." Remembering her wish for him to never be lonely again, Mira Jane felt a sudden urge rise up in her chest and she didn't fight it. Completely catching the blonde off guard, his eyes widened in surprise as the girl leant up and pressed her lips against his own. His shocked gaze rested on her closed eyes, not even breathing for fear of ruining something. She looked so fragile, so vulnerable, so delicate that it felt like if he even blinked he would break her. After what felt like an eternity, Mira Jane pulled away, a beautiful blush adorning her nose in the starlight. Smiling up at the blonde, she reached out and cupped his cheek carefully. "I did make a promise and I plan to stick with it. No matter where you are, you'll never leave my thoughts." Dropping her hand, Mira Jane pulled Naruto's arm back around her shoulders and snuggled down into his chest. Watching the girl with wide eyes, Naruto didn't even notice his other arm come around to offer further warmth to the girl. The emotions that now swirled around his head were unlike anything he had ever felt. What was this? What did it mean? Was that right? He seemed to be stuck looping over those questions and more for what felt like hours before he regained some form of consciousness. Finally taking a shaky breath, Naruto closed his eyes and felt a smile twitch his lips. Damn the questions. For now, he'd just accept what happened and bask in the afterglow of the kiss. Finding himself waking up in the spare bed at Kana's house, Naruto yawned, stretched and then scratched his head as he tried to remember last night. He remembered the boat ride, the rooftop, the kiss, but then after that it got hazy. He did remember walking Mira Jane back to her place and getting a hug goodnight, but most other details were a bit blurry. Yawning again, Naruto held his head as he sat up, a bit of a headache struggling to make itself known before the regenerative strength gifted him by the Kyuubi killed it. Stretching again, the blonde shivered as he felt his back pop. Dropping his arms, he wandered out into the kitchen and found Kana sitting at the table, hunched over a cup of coffee. Looking up, she raised an eyebrow and whistled. My Naruto. I was not expecting to see you up so early. Feeling okay? Naruto nodded and dropped into the chair opposite. Yeah, I feel great. By the way, what time did I get in last night? Chuckling, Kana pushed him over a cooling cup of tea. He didn't really like the bitter flavor of the stuff Kana was drinking. Not too late. Do you remember what happened last night at all though? Looking up in remembrance, a light blush rose to his cheeks and he smiled like a dork. Yeah, me and Mira Jane had a good night. Laughing, Kana reached out and slapped his shoulder. That you did. I saw you two on the roof. She winked at the blonde and laughed when he looked down in surprise. What did you see? She sat up happily, looking like she had just found something she could use to blackmail him with. Oh, enough I'd say. Grinning, Naruto's eyes thinned. Yeah, you definitely know I had a good night then. I can't wait to see her again. Laughing, the girl leaned in. Aw, have you got a crush now? Biting his lip, Naruto frowned in thought. Well, I dunno what you'd call it but it feels pretty good. Raising her mug in his direction, Kana nodded her head. Indeed it would. That was our reason for the celebratory drinks last night. Naruto blinked. Is that what happened after I got home? The brunette nodded. Yup, and after the amount you drank, I'm surprised you didn't wake up tomorrow. Naruto chuckled and took a sip of his drink. Yeah, well I kinda have a good metabolism. Flushes my system pretty well. Pouting, Kana took another sip of her drink. I hate you. Do you have any idea how long it took me to build up my resistance to alcohol? Laughing, Naruto swallowed the rest of his. Nope, but I'm guessing a while. So, what's for breakfast? Leaning back in her chair, Kana looked at the kitchen. I dunno. You making me breakfast? The blonde rolled his eyes. I thought that was when you were in bed. Hearing a chair scrape, Naruto looked down just as he heard the squeak from her mattress as a body landed on it. What are you talking about? I am in bed. Chuckling, Naruto resigned himself to kitchen duties and pulled himself to his feet. After a hearty breakfast, Naruto and Kana had come in early to the guild to meet up with Erza. The woman usually arrived early as it was, but today was a special occasion. Naruto was especially eager for more reasons than one. Stepping in, they saw Erza pacing around nervously. Raising a hand, Naruto called out happily. Erza! Keen for today? Startling slightly, the redhead looked over and swallowed. Naruto! Kana! Yes, I suppose I am. Where we'll be headed to today? Waving her closer, Naruto lowered his voice so the few sleepy mages that were turning up couldn't hear. I wanna head out a bit further from where I normally train. There's some good mountains out there that will provide cover. Nodding in relief, Erza visibly relaxed. Kana however was growing suspicious and narrowed her eyes. What exactly is this then? You still haven't told me. Naruto looked over. I don't really want to reveal it here and neither does Erza. If you want to find out, come with us. It's not like you have to participate if you don't want to. Relieved that they weren't going to force her into something painful, Kana sighed happily and placed a hand on her hip. Alrighty then, how about we get a move on then? Grinning oh so happily, Naruto nodded. Indeed, let's. The trio now found themselves in a nice secluded place amongst a number of tall rocks that provided plentiful amounts of protection from wandering eyes. Kana and Erza stood before Naruto, one wondering about what was going on and the other wondering if they'd be able to handle it. Naruto meanwhile just stood before them silently. He let the tension build up a bit before starting off things. Alright. Now Kana, what I will be teaching Erza today, and hopefully you, is the fine art of physical distraction. The brunette raised an eyebrow. Explanation please for those of us that don't know what you mean. Holding it together well, Naruto raised a finger. My pleasure. When I was younger, I happened across a technique that seemed to be the ultimate ability for buying you some time to escape, attack or interrogate. Do you know what that is? Kana sighed at the roundabout explanation. No, please enlighten me. Naruto smirked and crossed his fingers. He went up in an explosion of smoke and suddenly Naruto was now his female counterpart, a few wisps of smoke covering her modesty. Kana instantly snorted in surprise while Erza looked on, a blush spreading across her cheeks but keenly hanging on to every word. Laughing, Naruto continued in a higher, womanly voice. It is the female body. Even you were instantly affected, and don't try deny it. Blushing slightly, Kana turned away in a huff. Erza just nodded and motioned for him to continue. There is the classic, jump em while you're naked routine. That's good for shock factor, but to really milk it, you gotta accentuate parts. As he spoke, he brought his finger up to his lip, squeezing the new amounts of flesh between his arms and widening his eyes exponentially. He also let out a little innocent squeak to complement the look. He couldn't hold it for long though as Erza's face lit up bright red and Kana's single watching eye nearly filled her face in shock. Bursting out laughing, he held his stomach and struggled to bring him mirth under control. He was the teacher after all. Wiping away a tear, Naruto sighed. You see? Just doing that can distract even other women. So just think about what it could do to the men in Fairy Tail. Both women instantly thought back to the guild. They weren't too sure how well it'd work on someone like Natsu, but on someone like the guild master. Instantly alert, Erza stepped forward. Please let me know if I am doing it right. Fireworks instantly went off inside Naruto's head as the blonde nodded sagely. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Schooling his features the way his old master had explained, Naruto crossed his arms over his sizable chest and waited. Kana also looked over, curious to see what the resident swordswoman could come up with. She seemed to take a few breaths and fidget about a bit as she slowly grew redder. After a minute or two, Naruto could swear he could almost see steam shooting from her ears. Finally though, Erza crossed her arms and looked away. I can't do it. No! Instantly panicking, Naruto tried to salvage what he could. I don't understand why though. I'm currently a girl and there's no one else around. Besides, back before you defended the guild from that Jupiter blast, you dropped that towel and ran up naked in front of everyone. The woman's eyebrow twitched slightly as she remembered. She didn't say anything though. Not one to be discouraged though, Naruto held his hands out. That's alright though. Not every woman is able to do something like this. It takes many hard years of killing your modesty. You could however, try the other use. You'll probably find it a little more like what you're used to. Raising his hands, Naruto crossed his fingers and went up in a cloud of smoke. Erza looked over and frowned in thought when she saw the latest change. Naruto was now clothed, if barely by a purple, two-piece outfit. Long, bicep-length gloves and thigh-length boots covered his limbs. His bust was concealed just behind a tight, three-pronged bikini top, the points of each facing inward and only just preventing from anything being shown. Tiny shorts covered his lowers with a devil's tail poking out from the back. To complement the look, Naruto had a hair band on with two little black horns poking out from the top. Grinning as he saw Erza's interest, he placed his hands on his hips successfully. This is the second type of distraction. Sometimes more is less, if you know what I mean. A naked attack is all well and good, but something like this will make a guy obsess over what is beneath, right up until he can't even think straight. He then pointed at the horns. This also gives the bad girl look a bit of a kick as it makes me look like I'm easy. Men get pretty loose tongues when presented with something like this. Studying Naruto's state of dress, Erza raised her hand to cup her chin in thought. Yes. I understand your reasoning. It is also more acceptable to me. Perhaps I could try that. Naruto nodded. Yeah. So do you have anything you could try in your equip warehouse? Nodding, Erza began to glow. I believe so. Stars began shining in Naruto's eyes as he eagerly awaited the transformation. It only lasted a moment before the light was replaced by a simple, black two-piece bikini. Drawing her hands down her body, Erza looked over at Naruto. How is this? Naruto nibbled his lip and narrowed an eye. Not bad, but we can make it better. Firstly, underboob. Underboob works amazingly, so pull the top up a bit to reveal a bit more of the bottom. The blonde then pointed at the generous amounts of flesh that was visible from the bottom of his top. Finding herself blushing yet again, Erza gripped the top and hesitated slightly. Suddenly thinking of something to help with the discomfort, she spun around to look at Kana. Kana! Won't you try this with me? You're much more used to displaying large parts of your body. The brunette had until then been watching the scene with varying degrees of amusement. Initially she had been shocked that Naruto would have even suggested something like that, but Erza's discomfort as she tried to learn this technique was just too good to miss. Now that she was the center of attention though, she was beginning to regret her choice to stay. Well, I'd rather watch the master help you out, you know. I mean, we came out here for you. The air seemed to darken around Erza. Please Kana, won't you assist me with this? Shrinking into herself, Kana internally began crying. She didn't wanna. Her desire to not get beaten up by an emotionally unstable teen however was significantly greater. Looking over at Naruto, she narrowed her eyes as she scrutinized the temporarily blonde girl. She didn't seem to look like she cared, hell, she was picking her nails in disinterest. Sighing, Kana nodded unhappily. Fine, but you owe me a drink. The aura around Erza seemed to fade and the girl smiled. Just this once for helping me out. Meanwhile, Naruto's heart was racing 1,000 miles a minute. Erza had actually ordered Kana to help her out with fixing up her top. It couldn't get much better than this. When they actually started picking at the fabric that covered their modesty, it was all Naruto could do to continue looking indifferent and not fly away via a blood cannon. Experiences with Jiraiya had shown him that letting the creepy, perv face show was the fastest way to a slap and shattered dreams. So, once his nails were suitably buffed, he looked up. Erza was now standing with her hands on her waist, feet slightly apart and a confident aura surrounding her. Kana was looking a little more ruffled, the girl grumbling to herself about something. Each had their bikini top pulled up ever so slightly and revealed just enough skin for it to be considered taunting. Nodding, Naruto pointed at them. Good start. You could always pull the top up more as more skin without actually showing anything equals a more flustered male. Tighter tops help this. He then focused on Erza. Erza, a question to you. How would you negotiate a situation where you needed information from a target? A long sword materialized in her hand and she pointed it at Naruto. I would make them tell me what I needed to know. Naruto nodded. Okay, that's one way. How about in a crowded area? The redhead cocked an eyebrow. You mean to tell me the first scenario wasn't? Resisting the urge to slap his face, Naruto took a breath. Okay then, Erza, we gotta work on your feminine charms. The girl huffed indignantly. Are you calling me manly? Kana began backing away slowly as Erza growled at Naruto. Holding his hands up, the blonde shook his head. No, not at all. You just need to use them better. Currently you look scary. What you want is to look innocent, gentle, maybe a little bit teasing, but not scary. Naruto began shrinking in on himself, widening his eyes and letting a little moisture wash over them. You see the effect this has? It makes me look like I'm nervous and scared. You do that and your target thinks they have the dominance. Frowning, Erza looked herself over. Okay, so what else could help? Naruto had a quick think. Brush a fair amount of hair over one eye. Yep, just like that. Now, face the ground and look up through your fringe. Widen your eyes a touch, lovely. Now hunch your shoulders forward, accentuate your cleavage, and look at you now. The whole demeanor of the fiery woman had changed from a strong, imposing warrior to a shy, unsure girl just looking for attention. Remembering to control his drool, Naruto nodded. Perfect. If you tried that on any male, even me, I'd have trouble remembering to keep my mouth shut. Frowning, Kana then decided to speak up. That actually makes me wonder, why isn't it affecting you the way you said it should? You haven't so much as flinched. Naruto placed his hands on his hips proudly. Kana-chan, I have been forced into strip clubs with my perverted old teacher more times than I care to count. This is nothing I can't handle. Suddenly a fire seemed to light in Erza's eyes. So, you say that you are more resilient than the average male? Looking over, Naruto raised an eyebrow. Yup, I'd say so. Walking forward, the redhead began crossing her steps, also slowly starting to sway her hips while leveling him with a predatory gaze. Naruto froze and swallowed, the blonde suddenly finding himself held captive by the woman. If that is the case, then if I can successfully extract information from you, in theory I should be able to accomplish this with any male. Walking up, she poked a finger into his sternum. Isn't that right? Breaking his gaze, Naruto looked over to Kana. The brunette was just grinning at him. She's right, you know. Turning back to the redhead, Naruto steeled himself. It looked like he had to get his hands dirty. Fine. If you can successfully charm some information of my home out of me, you can consider yourself passed. Erza nodded confidently, but then backed off slightly. Before I start though, please return to your male form. It is awkward interrogating a female like this. Hearing a bark of laughter from Kana, Naruto shrugged. Whatever's easiest. Returning to normal Naruto, the blonde crossed his arms and stared down at the alluring woman. Do your worst. 10 minutes in and Erza was growling. Nothing she could seem to think of could budge him. She tried sexy whispers, body contact, promises, anything she could think of that didn't involve violence simply because Naruto strictly prohibited it after she pulled a sword on him within the first few seconds. She looked at the blonde in frustration. I don't get it. Here you say all males have their weakness, yet I do everything I can think of and yet you don't give me anything. Have you been lying to me? Naruto chuckled. I never said this would be easy. Go try it on the master. If anything, he'd be a level 1 if there were grades for something like that. Gray and Elfman would be harder and Natsu would be harder again, if only for the reason he wouldn't understand what was happening. Frowning, Erza pointed at him. So you didn't just have me parading around in my bikini for no reason? Naruto shrugged. I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but if you don't believe me, go try it on one of them. Huffing, Erza crossed her arms. Looking over at Kana, she frowned. What would you do in such a situation? This is quite out of my normal depth. Raising an eyebrow from her seat on a rock, Kana placed a finger on her chin. Well, I'd first drink them under the table, then get what I wanted out of them with a couple of sly comments and a wink and be on my way. Naruto nodded appraisingly. Good. Fine idea, alcohol is a brilliant tongue relaxant. Erza quickly decided it was worth trying and looked over at Kana. How much alcohol do you have on you? And don't say none because I know you are lying. I want to see what I can do with a bit of that. Kana laughed and pointed at the blonde. Erza, you can't handle a glass of the stuff. Naruto however can keep up with me. If anything, 2 shots into the night and you'd be spilling all your dirty little secrets to him. Blushing as some of those dirty secrets came to mind, Erza shook her head. That was reason enough to abandon the idea. Sighing in defeat for the moment, Erza stepped back. Well, for now I am out of ideas. Do you wish to have a go, Kana? Looking at the stubborn teen, Kana narrowed her eyes slightly. While she was never really into anything like that, she was curious to see how well she went against the resilient boy. Nodding slowly, she stood up and dusted her pants down. Yeah. I'll give it a crack. Taking the redhead's place, Kana looked into Naruto's eager eyes. Rolling hers, she could clearly tell he was enjoying this a lot more than he let on. She couldn't blame him though. What male wouldn't be happy after having someone like Erza performing all sorts of promiscuous acts to them? Still, Kana wasn't about to go and do something like that. She didn't have the boldness required. No, her trick was a little something she learnt on her travels, a certain spot called the sweet spot. Everyone had one where if you tickled them just right they'd sing. Looking Naruto over, she tried to find a possible spot. You don't mind if I touch your face or anything like that? Naruto shrugged. Nup. Go for it. Smirking, the brunette reached out and ran a finger down the outside of his ear. All she got out of that was a raised eyebrow. Moving her hand down his spine, she tried a soft rub at the base of his neck. Still nothing. Frowning, the teen tried a few more places. After a couple of attempts at the usual hot spots, Kana had her hand to her mouth as she frowned in thought. The boy didn't seem to have any nerve endings because he didn't even flinch when she tickled him. Looking curiously at his cheeks though, she moved in to see them better. They were legitimate marks in his skin, the darkened marks sinking maybe 0.5 millimeter into his flesh. Reaching out, she traced a nail down them. Her eyes widened then as she actually felt something twitch beneath them. Grinning, she turned to Erza. I think I may have just got something. The redhead quickly ran up and watched on. Cupping Naruto's cheeks, Kana let her hands slide down them and along the scars. A shiver instantly coursed Naruto's body and his eyes lit it somewhat. Aw, that feels nice. Eyes twinkling at the prospect, Kana began drawing her fingers down Naruto's cheeks. So, you like that huh? Naruto nodded as a strange noise rumbled around in his chest. Raising her fingers so the nails were gently dragging, she repeated the process. So what's home like huh? I don't think I've even heard you talk of it. Naruto sighed into the fingers. Not telling. Frowning, Kana began stroking his cheeks with her open palm. You sure about that? Instead of an answer, the rumble in Naruto's chest churned about for a second before being breathed through his nose. Naruto instantly froze in horror as Kana suddenly bit off a laugh. Erza seemed like she was chuckling too. Furrowing her eyebrows, Kana struggled to stop laughing. Did you just, purr? Naruto's face lit up like a lantern as Kana instantly burst out laughing, her loud barks being complemented by Erza's own softer one. Growling in embarrassment, Naruto shook his head. Nah, it wasn't. What are you talking about? That was a growl, Databeo. Squealing, Kana reached out and wrapped Naruto up in a hug as she continued to laugh out loud. And now even that adorable little catchphrase. You are just too cute. Quickly finding things backfiring, Naruto stomped his foot. I am not. Let me go. Pushing Kana off him, the brunette just continued to laugh, now using Erza as a support to hold herself up. Aw, the little orange rocket all cranky now. Growling in frustration, Naruto shook his head. Don't call me that. It has to be the crappiest nickname ever. Falling over, Kana now lay on the grass as she held her stomach, fits of laughter racking her body. Now positively glowing, Naruto quickly created a clone which picked up Kana and took off running towards the town. Turning to look back at Erza, Naruto sighed. What a way to ruin a perfect moment. Who would have guessed he could purr though, of all things? Stupid fox traits. Foxes don't even purr. Crossing his arms in a huff, he looked away as Erza wiped away a tear and smiled. Ah Naruto, you are such a funny character sometimes. I think that has effectively brought out training to an end though, so I guess it is time we began yours. Glowing, Erza quickly replaced the bikini with her usual torso armor and blue pleat skirt. Reaching out, she ruffled Naruto's hair and began walking back towards Magnolia. Now, we agreed to try and work out a way to increase your equip speed, did we not? Grumbling to himself, Naruto kicked a rock into the distance and sighed. Yeah, we did. Might as well get onto it now. Walking back to the guild, Naruto found the place fairly normal. His clone had taken Kana back to her place and locked her in her room so no one could find out about the incident. Childish, yes, but you can't deny the effectiveness. Wandering in, they saw most mages collected around a board, all of them studying it intently. It seemed like the job board was open again after its temporarily closure. Seeing Mira-Jane at the counter, Naruto grinned and ran over. Mira-chan. Good to see you. Instantly brightening, the girl reached out an arm and gave the blonde a hug. It's good to see you too. What have you been doing all morning? Naruto seemed to phase out a little at this as he remembered the first half of the day. Training. Giggling, Mira closed an eye and looked up at him. Is that so? And why wasn't I invited? Instantly a tiny amount of drool slipped from his lips at which he quickly sucked up. Well, I can organize a catch-up lesson if you want. Mira-Jane giggled again and shook her head. No need for that. I would however, take another date. Coming back, Naruto blinked several times. Another. Rolling her eyes, she flicked the teen with her towel. Yes, duh. Last night was perfect and I'd love to do it again. A small smile slipped onto Naruto's face. Yeah, it had been a date. It mightn't have started out like one, but it sure ended like the ones he had seen. Nodding happily at the revelation, Naruto grinned broadly. Yeah, sure. I'm super keen to go out again. Suddenly, Erza slipped up beside them, a serious look on her face. What's this I hear about dates? Startling, Naruto went to say something but was cut off by Mira-Jane. Oh, just a little thing we did last night. I really liked it so I asked if he'd like to do it again. Frowning, Erza nodded. Indeed. That is a very good idea. Naruto. Would you want to go out with me then? The blonde's brain melted. Looking over at Mira-Jane for help, he saw the girl glowing a soft black. He wasn't quite sure if it was his imagination or not, but whatever it was, he could feel it was pulling at something within him. The barmaid kept a happy face, but her words seemed to have a bit more bite to them than usual. "Oh, I'm sure that's okay with Naruto. I do believe we were just organizing something for the next week or so I'm sorry but you'll have to wait your turn." Naruto could swear he just felt his brain run out his ears. Mira-Jane was actually allowing this? Didn't girls usually fight tooth and nail over something like this? That's what Ero-Senin always said. While usually pretty good at knowing what to do in a situation with women due to the nature of his teacher, this time around though Naruto had absolutely no idea so wisely decided to stay quiet. Erza seemed mostly oblivious to the strange aura being directed at her, and turned to look at Naruto with a smile. "Fine then. We shall organize something in a week. For now though, let us see what we can do about your training." Finding something he understood, Naruto grabbed at the opportunity and nodded vigorously. Yeah. Sorry Mira-chan, Erza was helping me out with a faster sealing method. We'll just be at one of the tables though so if you want to come have a look we'll be right there. Instantly all sunshine and lollipops again, Mira-Jane gave Naruto a beautiful smile. "No problem. I hope you work something out." Grinning, Naruto raised a hand and waved. Turning around, he then came nose to nose with a certain striking blonde he didn't really like all that much. Frowning, Naruto crinkled his upper lip like he smelt something bad. "Get out of my face, Laxus." Smirking, the strangely dressed man stood up straight. "Oh, that cut me deep, noob. Not even a hello. Surely you must have more respect for your superiors." Naruto growled and tried to push past him. Laxus just shifted so he was standing in his way again. Clenching a fist, Naruto looked up. "Move." Laughing, Laxus shook his head. "Why don't you try make me, oh great wizard." So that's why he was here. Erza instantly picked up on this and placed a hand on each male's arm. "Let's not talk about this. Come Naruto, we have things to do." A sudden spark shot out from Laxus's arm and Erza recoiled with a sharp squeal. Holding her hand she glared at him. "That was unnecessary." Laughing, he cast a gaze over the woman. "Keep your nose out of our business. Men are talking." Looking down, Laxus's grin dropped when he saw Naruto walking over to Erza and pulling her away. Growling, a sudden crack echoed through the room as Laxus transformed himself into pure electricity and jumped in front of the two. The noise had been enough to instantly hush the guild and everyone was now watching the three powerful humans as they faced off. Keeping his eyes down, Naruto managed to grate out, "Move Laxus." "I'm not interested." Growling at being ignored, the tall man whipped out a hand and roughly grabbed Naruto's chin, pulling his burning eyes up to meet his own. "You might want to look at me when you're speaking to me, boy." Having had enough, Naruto's hand flashed up faster than most could see and smacked away the hand. Even Laxus's eyes widened when everyone realized he had actually managed to make contact with the resident lighting mage. "One last time for you who can't understand simple instructions. Get out of my way." Laughing nastily, Laxus poked Naruto in the chest, right where he had his badge pinned. "Ha! You trying to order me around, sir?" Naruto just continued glaring at the taller man. It quickly infuriated him and he suddenly lashed out, grabbing Naruto's shirt and pulling him easily off the ground. "You don't deserve that title." "I do." Spinning around, Laxus threw Naruto high into the sky and way out of Magnolia's borders. Hearing a horrified cry behind him, he turned to see Mira-Jane running for him. "No, don't do it Laxus." Laughing, Laxus watched as she neared him. "I'm just out to prove a point. Be back with your darling boyfriend soon." And just as she reached out to grab him, he dematerialized and shot off in a bolt of energy in Naruto's direction. That's it for the part 7 of this series. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.